possible too.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and a good night. I am King Piggly. This is Gaming Imperfectly, and thank you so much for being here today, guys. Thank you. And if you're new to the channel, welcome. I am King Piggly, and I hope you like what you see. And today, guys, I'm going with a little different format. If you haven't noticed already, today is not going to be a gameplay and a movie review. We're in the spooky season, and you know what? King Piggly actually has a very strong like to the mysterious, the dark, the macabre. You know, I always read these real crime stories. There's a great series of books called Missing 411 that are about people that just up and vanish that I really enjoy reading, that like cold cases, never been solved. They just disappeared, you know. And also just tragic stories, stuff like that. You know, I'm just into that kind of stuff, you know. And if you are too, then you're going to enjoy today's video, because we're going to talk about really a horrific story. This doesn't have an outcome that's good, and if you have claustrophobia, this might not be the video for you. But regardless, sit back, relax, and I hope you enjoy, because we're just going to jump into the story of John Jones. You're probably asking yourself, King Piggly, who the hell is John Jones? Well, I'm going to tell you. John Jones was a 26-year-old guy. He was from Utah. And he was a medical student. He was married. His wife had, they had a 1-year-old child, and she was pregnant actually with their second child. And John came from a rather large family. I think he had 6 brothers and sisters, including himself. And they had come home for Thanksgiving. And this was back, I think, in 2009, 2007, 2009. Excuse me, I have my notes over here. King Piggly's notes, so I can keep the story straight. Because you know how King Piggly gets. This is Gaming Imperfectly. I'm a walking train wreck upstairs. Anyway, guys, so John Jones came home with his family to celebrate Thanksgiving with his people. And, you know, being from Utah in this area, John had grown up with a love of spelunking. And if you guys don't know what spelunking is, it's cave diving. It's going and exploring caves. And John grew up doing this. And there's one particular cave that John knew well from his childhood. And so did his brothers and sisters, which was a place called Nutty Putty Cave. All right, and the reason they call it that is because it kind of looked like peanut butter and clay texture of the caves themselves, so they called it Nutty Putty, because that's what it kind of felt like. Not that there wasn't also rock involved, guys, it's cave, but the look of it. Anyway, so, you know, they're sitting around one day, you know, and getting ready, like I said, they're celebrating Thanksgiving, they're all spending time with one another, and John and his siblings decide, you know what, let's go explore Nutty Putty Cave, like old times, you know, and John's like, hey, yeah, all right, sounds like a great idea. This is something he really loved doing, guys. And so John and his family went to Nutty Putty Cave, like they always did. Of course, his wife didn't come because she's pregnant, and of course, I think his mom and dad stayed behind as well. But a few of the siblings and their spouses, and of course, John's brother, whose name was Josh, his younger brother, I think he was like 3 years younger than John, they went to Nutty Putty Cave. And they were, you know, going around the cave and exploring and just really kind of checking it out. And there's this kind of intermediate places you can go for people who are kind of novice to cave exploring or spelunking. And then there's harder parts of this cave that are made for people who are more expert at cave exploring, spelunking. And, you know, most of the family were hanging with this intermediate novice area. But John and his brother Josh wanted to do something a little tougher. And so they went off by themselves, and they went to this part of the cave that's actually called the birth canal. Now, if you can't tell by the name, it's a tight squeeze, guys. And they had a map, and they're kind of following along in this cave trying to get to the birth canal, and they come to one area, and John sees this hole, you know, about waist high. And without hesitation, he's like, well, this is the birth canal. And so he goes in head first down this hole, crawling his way into this pretty tight spot. And he was certain that it was the birth canal. So, you know, and by name, this hole is really tight, guys. You know, it's just, that's why they call it the birth canal. And John's inching his way through, and it's getting tighter and tighter, you know, and he keeps telling himself, you know, any minute now it's going to open up, because that's the way it is, you know. And if you can just push through, if you have the fortitude, the mental toughness, if you're not afraid and you just kind of push through this claustrophobia that you're going to feel, eventually you'll push through and it opens up into a larger cavern. And John just kept going and going and going, and it's getting tighter and tighter and tighter. And finally he gets to this point to where there's ahead of him, because he's got a headlamp on, and ahead of him it kind of slopes down. You kind of see this slope in this passageway that he's inching down now, crawling down. And he gets to the point where there's a lip, like a little bump right there in his chest, So John sucks in all his breath, and he pushes past that lump, and then he exhales, which means now that rock is into his sternum, and he can't back out. Now that he's expanded his lungs, and sucking it all back in isn't working either. And even worse than that, now that he has pushed past this one point, this one tough spot, to where he was sure that once he got over this lip and started inching down it, that it would open up into another cavern, past the birth canal. To his great horror, as he came around the bend there and got down, it dead end. The passage actually went down to a point and to nothing, to a complete dead end. Even worse than that, John now knew he's stuck. Like, he can't move at all. He's exhaled, he can't get out. And John's about 6 feet tall and weighs about 200 pounds. And he's in an opening about this big, guys. I know it sounds crazy, but he has managed to get himself into this spot. So he calls to his brother, and his brother's waiting outside. He can barely hear him, but he calls to his brother and says, "Josh, I'm stuck." So Josh heads down. His brother heads down this little passage as well, and gets to his brother's feet, starts pulling on him, and he can't get him out. And he realizes that they're in trouble. They're in serious trouble now. So Josh backs out. Luckily, could get himself out, and actually manages to wriggle backwards and get out of this hole, and tells him, "Don't worry, John, I'm going to go get help." And he does. Well, 3 hours later, guys, if you can't imagine the horror, okay, this blows my mind. But for 3 hours, he's stuck in that hole before the first responder even gets there, the first rescue person. And I can't remember her name, but the first person on scene was a lady by the name of Susie Matola. Susie Matola was the first responder to show up on the scene. And, she kind of goes down this hole as far as she dares, and she, talks to John. She says, "John, how you doing?" And, John goes, "Hi, Susie, thanks for coming." He's still very calm. And he says, "But I really want to get out of this hole." Rightly so. So Susie's looking at it, and she's kind of realizing this isn't good. Because actually John, since he's gone over that lip that I was telling you guys about, is now almost completely vertical. All right? So he is almost completely upside down, his head pointing down. Now, guys, if you don't know this about human beings, we're not meant to be upside down. We're not bats. In fact, our bodies are absolutely designed, made, whatever you believe, but we are upright beings, and our heart uses gravity actually to keep blood pumping through our body in an appropriate way. So when you're upside down, what happens is all the blood's rushing to your head, it's rushing to this part of your body, and your heart cannot beat strong enough to move the blood the way it's supposed to move fluids the way it's supposed to. So she knows that since John is head down and has already been head down for 3 hours, that this isn't good. All right, they have to get him out, and they need to get him out fast. So the rest of the responders and rescue workers start showing up. They go down into the tunnels. They make their way to where John is, and they're all looking at it, and they realize how bad of a situation this is. So these guys get to work, these rescue guys, and the first thing they do is, of course, they try to put a rope around his legs and pull him out, and that doesn't work. Then they go down and they try to chisel out around John as best they can, just one person at a time, trying to go down there and help him. That doesn't work, because what happens is they actually get a trauma doctor to come and check out John while he's down there. So try to take some vitals, to talk to him, get some response. And what happens is that John is starting to sound nasally, and you could tell that his breath is becoming labored. And this is from the pressure of being upside down. And so the doctor comes out from examining John. It's like, hey, honestly, John has maybe 8 to 10 hours before he dies. we have to get John out of this hole. So they're like looking at it. So then they decide to set up a pulley system, this elaborate pulley system. So you get these guys that are in there and they're shooting bolts into rocks, and they're setting up this elaborate pulley system. They hook it around John's leg. And one of the rescuers, because remember, they can only fit in there one at a time, he goes down and he wraps it around John's legs, and they start kind of ratcheting John back out of this hole. And they actually do start making some progress. They start getting John out. But just when they were making some progress, one of the bolts pops out of the wall. In fact, it hits the rescue worker in the face, knocking him unconscious in the hole. And tragically, John slips further down the hole than he was before. At this point in time, they have to rescue the guy that's unconscious, but he wakes up and they can get him out, but he's done. They take him to the surface. A new worker comes in there and tries to start reattaching the walls to get the pulley system out, and they start trying to get John out again. And meanwhile, they keep talking to him and trying to get him to respond. They have to keep him awake, And so by this time, guys, almost 20 some odd hours have passed with John being stuck in this hole. Again, I can't imagine the horror. The story isn't going to do justice to how long they were actually in this hole and the uncomfortableness. When I heard this story, guys, it made me uncomfortable just hearing about, being trapped in something like this. But the worst part of it, again, is John is upside down in this hole, and his body is starting to go into shutdown mode. It's really imminent that they have to get him out, and his death is imminent, and they know this. Well, then it dawns on them as they're trying to ratchet John out of this again, because of the angle of that lip and where he's at. Now that they're getting his legs back up and everything else, they now realize that to get John back around this corner that he's now got himself down into is that they would actually have to, his legs won't bend backwards, guys. Your legs don't bend backwards unless you're double jointed, and John is not double jointed. So they realize to get John out of this hole, what they're going to have to do is actually break his legs to get him out of the hole. It's horrific. They also realize, though, that by this stage of the rescue, that John is so close to death that if they were to break his legs, that it would send him into shock and it would kill him. The shock would kill him before they got him out of the hole. And it was at this point that they all kind of looked at one another and realized that John is not going to make it, that they are not going to be able to get John out of this hole, and that John is indeed going to die. So before he becomes unresponsive, they get walkie-talkies down in there. They get John's wife to the hole. He gets to say goodbye to her. He gets to talk to his wife one last time, to his family. And sadly, 27 hours after being stuck in this hole, guys, and I couldn't imagine, 27 hours after being stuck in this hole, John Jones became unresponsive. The medical doctor that was on scene went down into the tunnels, checked John's vitals, and declared John Jones dead at the age of 26. This was such a tragedy to everybody in the family, and the fact that they couldn't even get him out after death. They decided just to leave John there. And to this day, John's body is, in fact, in Nutty Putty Cave. The owner of the property has since sealed the cave completely with concrete. He's poured concrete in there, and they've put up a plaque and a memorial to John Jones. May he rest in peace. What a tragic story, especially for Thanksgiving and the holiday. But I couldn't think of anything more horrifying. Guys, that's going to do it for King Pigley today. I know it's a tragic story, but this is the season for horror. And I could not think of a ghost stories are great and all, but sometimes real life is far more horrific than any ghost story that I could possibly tell. But that's it for King Pigley, guys. I'm not going to keep you. I know this is a short video. It's kind of different than my normal videos. But if you like this video, guys, smash in that like button. Slap it around some. Smack it. And then rub it down to say you're sorry, because the like button likes that. And then also, guys, by all means, if you did enjoy this video, you want to see more, leave it in the comment section. I'd love to hear what you think. Are you claustrophobic? Do you go cave diving? Have you heard this story before? I'd love to hear from you. And also, if you're new and you've been here this long, consider subscribing. Keep coming back. I plan on doing more videos like this. I really, like I said, that's something that's a passion of mine, is reading these kind of macabre horror stories and dark stories and all that good stuff. Or horrible stuff, depending how you think about it. But anyway, that's it for King Pigley today. I'm out of here, and I will see you guys in the next video.